Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Writing Life, episode 3, with me, Stuart White, founder of Write Mentor. That's what the organisation's called, and Star Wars nerd extraordinaire. Today, I'm joined by Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi guys, I'm the writer of the Undying Tower trilogy and I work at Write Mentor with Stuart and try and avoid all the Star Wars puns. Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, unsuccessfully. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think everyone always gets drawn into it, don't they? It's
Yeah.
hard to escape. It's like a wormhole just drawing you on.
Don't say, well, wormhole. There's another, right? Just, we'll move past that. It's okay.
And you notice I didn't give you the big list of compliments this time to make you feel awkward.
Yeah, that was much better. You don't want to give compliments. We're talking about imposter syndrome today. No
Yeah.
compliments allowed to writers. Actually, we know we'll change that by the end, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But no, writers hate compliments.
I know. Oh my god. The second anyone sends someone to me, I either put myself down or
Mm.
I just ignore it completely.
Yep, that's me. Yeah, you just like you skim through the comments when you get comments back from an editor or a beta reader. It can be any level of professional at all, and you see the bits where they're like, "Wow, I love this sentence," and you're like, "Yeah." You just skip past that bit until you get to, oh, this bad bit. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what you focus on. But that's probably another episode to discuss right there, just
Oh
about
yeah, easily.
how we take feedback. Yeah.
Mm.
So what have you been working on? What have you been doing the last couple of weeks? Um, I know a little bit about it, but if you want to share anything, you can.
Yeah, so I was working on one project and then I got some bad writing news about that project. So instead of crying in my room, that's a lie. I did cry in my room for like one day, which is allowed. And then I pivoted to a different project because that's the best way to get around it is you just pivot to something else, put all your focus on something else, and it's fun and exciting and I don't know where it's going to go, and I'm not thinking about industry stuff. So yeah, I've been working on some new stuff, as well as editing another thing, which again I'm not allowed to talk about. So there's lots going on, really. So there's lots of stuff to distract me from the bad stuff, which is what it's like in writing all the time, isn't it? Up and down, like really, really
Yeah,
fast.
yeah,
So yeah, I've been all right, just editing and writing, which I quite like to do. I quite like to edit the end of a project, what's writing something new, because when the new stuff feels really rocky, I can look at the edited stuff and think, oh, one day it will be this nice. Not today. That's okay. And then when I get bored of editing, I can switch again. So it's quite nice. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's not very specific because I can't really talk about a lot of it, but
that's
that's what
okay.
I've been up to. What have you been up to?
For me,
Mm,
just working on again another wee secret project,
yeah.
um, which
Yay.
I get. Yeah, I can't say a huge amount about,
Yeah.
but it's quite nice though because it's something that's a wee bit outside my comfort zone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an urban fantasy thing, which is not what I usually write, and it's based on Scottish mythology. It's based in
Exciting.
Scotland.
Are you
Yeah, so
Scottish?
I
Do we
I'm a
need
wee bit
subtitles for
Scottish.
everyone?
I'm a wee bit Scottish.
Amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, working on that, which and it's quite nice actually. I'm obviously doing a lot of research. I know you were on a podcast actually this week talking about what you research as a writer, and
Yeah. Can't get enough
I've
of
been
these podcasts,
I
apparently.
know. No, I love them. I love them. And yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, looking at what writers research because I've
Yeah.
spent a lot of time like over the last 2 weeks looking at Scottish mythology and so on. So it's been good and it's interesting and it's at
Amazing.
the exciting embryonic stage. So that's
Yeah.
it's always fun then.
It is. It's always the best bit, especially before you get to the saggy middle. Again,
Yeah.
another whole other episode in that, but
I'm at the saggy second chapter at the moment, so never mind the saggy middle.
oh no.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
anyway, yeah. So that's what we're working on at the moment. So all very exciting. Honestly, I think that's one of my favorite things about being part of the writing community is chatting to other writers about what they're working on because
Yeah.
it's always so interesting and you get lots and lots of different ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So we are going to be discussing today Imposter Syndrome.
We
Dun dun
are.
dun.
Scary.
It's a funny word, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I think at all stages of writing, whether you're brand new or you're very experienced, I think everyone gets a sense of it in different ways,
Yeah,
depending, I guess,
definitely.
I guess depending on the expectations at the particular level that you're at. Um,
Expectations, that's an
yeah,
interesting one. Yeah, because I've been thinking about this all week. So it'll be interesting once we've gone through. We had so many good answers on the Twitter thread you put up from published authors, authors querying, authors who've just started and maybe have found the thread. It's been really interesting to see how things are similar, but also things are different depending on what stage you're at. So I'll talk about mine after we've talked about those. But yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot actually.
yeah, me too, and obviously all the answers have made me sort of reframe things a little bit as well, which has
Hmm.
been interesting. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the tweet that I popped out last week, it said I'm discussing imposter syndrome in an upcoming podcast, and the questions I was wanting to ask were, what gives people imposter syndrome?
Hmm.
How do you manage it if you do have it? Does it get any better with time or practice managing it? And does everyone get it? Because
Yeah.
I think I assumed that most people would get it to some extent, but maybe some of these answers will give more of an insight.
Yeah.
So just having a quick look through the list just now. Um, for example, one of my good friends there, Lydia, she says, "If only." I mean, I've not even reached the giddy heights of that first step to calling myself anything like an author, and that's
Mm.
interesting because a lot of people struggle with that to tell people they are a writer.
Yeah.
And I think author maybe, in my mind anyway, it has a slightly different meaning than writer.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
author, like people tend to say that for when you're published, but um, I think you can call yourself a writer, essentially from the point that you start writing.
Yeah, of
I don't
course
know
you
if you
can.
agree.
Yeah. If you're writing something and you're putting in effort into making something better, even if it doesn't have to be every day. I think this is another thing. It doesn't have to be every day. Doesn't it? It can be that some people like to say, "Oh, I was a writer, but I'm not anymore." And no, you're a writer. If you're trying to put effort into making something that you have written better, you're a writer. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think that extends all the way down to even like flash fiction. It's very
Yeah.
short, but if you're writing flash fiction, you're a writer, and
Yeah.
so it's not about quantity
No.
or output or anything. It's just about the process and being creative. I think.
Hmm.
And so, Lydia, you probably not listen to this, but Lydia, if you are listening, we definitely think of you as a writer,
A
and
great writer. I've read some
a
of
great
Lydia's
writer.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
agreed.
good
And
writer.
soon to be author if fate plays its hands kindly.
Exactly. Look.
Yep.
Subjectivity. Different episodes. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just having a quick flick through it. So
Mhm.
Catherine Prescott says, "Does everyone get it?" She'd love to know. She says she feels like she needs permission to write for other people, but obviously no one can give you that. So she grants it for
Right.
herself. Um, oh, sorry, if she grants it for herself, it doesn't count. So
Right.
she thinks of that as a form of imposter syndrome. If only she's calling herself a writer and giving
Yeah.
herself permission to do it, that it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Interesting. She said, in my experience, it gets worse with time and failure.
Mm.
Younger me had blind hope. I think we
Yeah.
all have some blind hope, don't we?
Yeah. I think when you're starting out, especially, didn't you? I think you've talked about, is it a graph or something where it's like if you don't have very much knowledge on your topic, then you have more confidence.
Yep,
Isn't that whole
that's right.
thing? And then as you get more knowledgeable about your topic, you get less confident at one point because you think, oh gosh, there's so much here actually, and am I good enough to
Yeah,
do this thing, whatever it may be. Yeah, so yeah, I always think that
and
when you see
and
younger writers, I'm always trying to encourage younger writers when I go on school visits because it's really tough. And they say, "Oh, I want to be an author," and you don't want to sit there, light up a cigarette, put your feet on the desk, and go, "Let me tell you a story." And they don't want to hear that. They want to hear like, "Yes, tell me to be an author." So of course, I'm encouraging, but let's focus on the writing, not being a famous author with a six-figure deal, which is, I think, part of the imposter syndrome thing. I don't think it goes away. I think at any stage, and I know people who have been, I think, Kezia Lupo, who's an author and an editor, was saying that she was essentially feeling imposter syndrome. She didn't put it like that because she's longlisted 4 times for an award as an editor, but never won it. And other people would be like, wow, you're an editor, you're a published author, like you get, but because she hasn't, it almost was giving her imposter syndrome, which is crazy.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I wonder if that's people just sort of reframing and resetting their parameters of success as
Yeah.
they go. So
Yeah.
for for people at the start, just signing a book deal is huge success. That is like
Yeah.
the pinnacle that they can imagine at that
Yeah.
time. But then
That's
once
so
you get to
true.
that stage, you reframe it, and and maybe that's so it's a continual thing where you're constantly striving for something.
Yeah. And so you're never kind of happy? Maybe that's where imposter syndrome comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably a degree of truth in that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just funny that the thing you were saying earlier on about the graph. The one that
Yeah.
goes from it's basically to do with it's to do with knowledge and confidence.
Okay.
So the lower your knowledge, the higher your confidence. They call it being at the top of Mount Stupid, which is a bit harsh, I think. But basically, it's you don't know what you don't know at that stage.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you don't know that you don't know all this stuff about writing craft and
Yeah.
etc. So at the start it can be tough, and you can have a lot of confidence, and that can quickly evaporate. And that's probably the stage at which a lot of people find it hard to continue.
Yes, I think that probably is the fastest drop off, is
Hmm.
realizing how I think we talk people have been talking loads about during the pandemic, people sort of what is that really annoying stupid phrase, everyone's got a novel in them. There's a phrase,
Yes.
it's everyone's got a novel in them, and it's such a stupid thing to say because first of all, it's assuming a lot, and that you can get that done, and that you have the time, and that you want to, and there's so much into just finishing a book. There's another thing that is a huge goal is just finishing a book. So no, not everyone has a novel in them, and not everyone has to have a novel in them if they don't want one. That's fine. There isn't one in there. Don't worry. Don't start looking for it if you don't want to write a novel. But you're probably not listening to podcasts if you don't want to write a novel.
True.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a bit, it is tough. I think a lot of people get maybe to the first stage and feel so proud of themselves, which they absolutely should. But that pride and that achievement evaporates immediately when those rejections start coming in. And I hate it. You feel I just finished an edit, a really big edit, and I'm so pleased I got to the end of it. I felt really good when I finished it. And already just a few days later, because I'm thinking about sending it to the back to the editor, I'm thinking, oh God, I'm not looking forward to this. And there's going to be more notes probably because I've had to tear bits of it apart because it's a developmental edit. I'm sure everyone knows the pain of having to tear bits of the story apart and put them back together again. And I'm already not pleased anymore or not as proud of myself. It lasted a day.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Oh,
Mm,
it's a torturous life.
yeah.
Um, in case anyone's interested, the graph I was talking about it's Dunning Kruger did the study, and if you just Google image Dunning Kruger graph,
Yeah.
it should show you it. But basically, the drop off initially is huge, and you go down to this really sort of low confidence part,
Mm,
very quickly, and it's a much sort of more gradual build back up towards mastery. And I suppose it's
mm,
like any craft where they say that you need to put in 10,000 hours into something before you
yeah.
truly master it. And it's just, if you sat down at a piano, you wouldn't expect after you had learned to play your first song that you'd be brilliant.
Mm,
And maybe we
exactly.
shouldn't expect that we're going to be masters of novel writing craft after writing one book.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that sometimes as well, we forget that it's practice. I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but yeah, you don't think the same when you're playing an instrument. I spoke to someone once and they were worried about having to cut the first 10,000 words of their book. And they said it was such a waste. Why did I think they'd be given feedback to cut the first 10,000 words from an agent one to one or something. And I said, no, it's not waste. Because obviously, if you told me, oh yeah, I'm inviting you to a violin concerto I'm doing, and when I got there, I've not done any practice because there's no point practicing before everyone's watching me, and that would be insane. You would
Yeah.
never do that. So yeah, why do we do that with our writing? Why do we punish ourselves?
I don't know. It's a strange thing, I'm certainly been guilty of it in the past, where I've said,
Mm.
"Oh, I couldn't possibly cut this bit because I spent so much time on it." And actually, you've got to be a wee bit more objective than that, and say, "What it's just practice time."
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think as well, speaking of, practicing and then getting up there, I'm just looking on the thread again, and we've got one from Lindsay Galvin,
Oh
the
yeah,
author of Darwin's Dragons, and I think she's got a book, My Friend the Octopus, coming out. She's one of our lovely mentors,
yep,
does some stuff with us, and she said her imposter syndrome is getting better. I had a lot of it with book one as I didn't know anyone or much about the industry. Time and experience has helped, although I still get it sometimes, usually when I worry what makes me qualified to write about something big, e.g., Darwin with Darwin's Dragons. I get through it by concentrating on one small thing at a time rather than looking at the whole picture, which is overwhelming. You only ever have to write the next sentence or do the next piece of research, and there's no limit to what you can achieve by it. Also, eyes front, no comparing, which is a good little
yeah.
finish. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that like there's so much truth in that. I can see why when
Yeah.
you are tackling something as big as that, you're like, yeah, how am I qualified? How, is there someone who's more expert in this area who should be
Mm,
writing this book and so on? And so, and because that's what imposter syndrome is, it's where you don't feel you deserve the praise or the
yeah,
accomplishments that you've
yeah.
achieved, or whatever it is, the status that you have. You don't feel like you deserve that for some reason.
Hmm.
Um,
I
yeah,
wonder
it's
if
interesting.
part of that is the look aspect of writing. I mean, I know imposter syndrome comes across a lot of different things, but specifically on writing, I definitely know I've got a book out, I've got another book deal, and I know for a fact that there are people who've been writing longer than me. And maybe even in my opinion, I think they work harder than me. They maybe write every day. They get up at 5 a.m. and they've got, kids and care work to do and a job and da da da. And I think, oh my gosh, like I've been really lucky with when I've been picked up. And I think that can be really hard. What she's saying about eyes front, I think it can work both ways. It can be, oh, this person's doing so much better than me, but also it's kind of horrible if you're in a writing group, especially, and you know somebody who you actually. I've got loads of my friends who are writers who I think are actually better writers than me, and have not just managed to land on the right desk. And that can feel like, do I deserve this? But I don't know. I've not thought about that before. But just what you were saying then about, do I deserve it? Like, am I allowed to be here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it is hard when you're close to people, and
Mm,
everyone feels like they are at a similar sort of level. Yet some people are making greater progress
yeah.
than others. So you feel like oh, there's not too much difference in terms of our writing ability, but for some reason someone sort of makes it, and they're doing really well, and it can be
Mm,
hard, can't it, when you're making
really hard.
comparisons like that?
Yeah, both ways, definitely.
Okay, interesting. Moving further down the tweet, so Natalia Godsmarks next. She's shortlisted for our novel award. Actually, I had the pleasure of listening to her read out her work last night as part of the
Woohoo!
ceremony. And she's obviously insanely talented.
Hmm.
But interestingly, she says that she gets it on and off when drafting a new novel. She doubts that she's
Yeah,
able to do it, which I
right.
think is probably quite relatable. Then when she starts to edit, she doubts that it will ever get any better than it was
Mm,
at the start, which again is very relatable. When she betas for other writers and do the comparison thing, then she gets it badly, which is just what we were discussing there.
yeah.
And obviously, every time she gets a rejection or doesn't place in a comp, um, yeah. But she said it's always there, but I'm learning to manage it. Mostly,
Mm.
I lean on writer friends to help me feel better, and that's a super important point, I think, at the end there.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the flip side of knowing lots of friends that aren't in the same boat as you and maybe worrying about it, is that they can help you through it. Like I'm the silly thing is I assume people might be annoyed at me in my writing group if I've maybe got through something or done well. If we a big one is if you all enter the same contest, right? And then you tell each other, "Oh, are you entering Bath? Are you entering Miss Lex?" "Yeah, I am." "Oh." And then maybe you get through and they haven't got through. What's silly is if they get through and I'm not annoyed at them, but I always assume they'll be annoyed at me. It's one of those things, isn't it? I think part of this
Yeah,
whole it's in our heads type scenario, like everybody's cheering for me, I'm cheering for everybody else. So why are they not cheering for? Obviously, they're cheering for me.
yeah.
Why wouldn't they be? Because I'm happy for them as well. So yeah, I think it's very good to lean on writing friends.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely help you through all range of things, but especially with things like imposter syndrome, it's
Mm.
nice. I know that yourself and Florian, for example, this week helped me out when I was like, "This, I can't do this. I can't write this. It's rubbish. I'm not used to this genre." Blah blah blah. And you guys managed to sort of cheer me up and
Yeah, gave you a good
lift me up
slap round the
about it.
chops.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so it certainly does help to have people
Yeah,
around you like that. So yeah, I guess if you're listening and you are alone and you don't have anyone to talk to about that, it's definitely a good idea to try and work. I mean, there's a few ways to do it. Obviously, you can meet people online just through chatting and so on. You can
yeah,
join more official um, situations like we have in the hub with
yeah,
being able to join a community like that. But yeah, finding other people who are like minded is so important, I think, to
yeah,
getting by.
definitely, definitely.
Next up, we have Catherine Emmett, our rhyming picture book tutor.
Yeah.
She says, contrary to everything we've read so far, she says she's not totally sure that she has it, or certainly not very often. And she says, "I sort of feel like I shouldn't admit this," which is interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. I think it's quite funny. I think, well, because on the one hand, obviously the goal is to get rid of imposter syndrome. So, I
Hmm.
wonder if this is a bit of a British citizen thing. I'm half American, and there are certain things that my American family would be quite, if I make a really nice looking meal and decide to put it on Facebook. I might put a picture of it up. I'll just put a picture up like, oh, something I threw together, or not that I usually bother, haha, and it'll be like very self deprecating. Whereas,
Yeah.
they'll just put up a picture of their Thanksgiving dinner that perhaps I don't think looks the most appetizing. Hope they don't listen to this. And they'll be like, look at what I did. Boom, here it is. There's a bit of a difference with Americans. Not necessarily a bad thing. This is the thing. We're all cringing. Like, I'm laughing, you're laughing, even saying it. But actually, is that necessarily a bad thing not to have imposter syndrome? No. Like, that's the goal. Stop having
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. We're all writers. That's fine. But there is kind of an embarrassment about not being embarrassed. Like, if you're successful, you should be a bit embarrassed at all times because that's
Yeah.
what makes you humble. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah, it is interesting you say
Yeah.
that, because I think it's definitely a cultural thing in the UK
Yeah.
to be self-deprecating, and not necessarily publicly admit that you are happy with your success, or you're happy with where you're at, with any aspect of your life, let alone
Yeah.
your writing. So yeah,
Absolutely.
good on you, Catherine. It's
Yeah.
nice
Do
and
it, Catherine.
refreshing to see that.
Yeah. Bottle
Um,
it and sell it, Catherine. I'll buy some. I'll have a pint of that.
yeah, exactly. Yes, you should. Next business venture is a bottle of what would we call it?
Oh, yeah.
Evaporating imposter syndrome, or
Yes. Imagine a whiskey brewed, like writer's tears, but it's like an opposite type, like
yes.
evaporating imposter syndrome.
Oh, magic. Yeah, so
Amazing.
there you go, Catherine. We will only ask for 10% of the profits on that business, please. Thanks.
Very forgiving, very benevolent.
Okay, super. So there's a lot of replies to get through. We're not going to go through all of them, obviously. I'm
Yeah.
just going to flick to one that I saw
Hmm.
down near the bottom, which was interesting. Yes, it's from Emily Kenny. I found it here. So she says
Okay.
one of the things that gives her imposter syndrome is not seeing other people like her doing well in the industry or being visible at all, and not
Oh,
getting the
okay.
attention or the same platform as as other authors and so on. Which is interesting, because obviously that's been something that's been discussed at length for a while, is making sure that there's more visibility for those who previously haven't had
Mm.
the same level of exposure and so on. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So I guess that's maybe less of a personal thing on the author's
Yeah.
front, and more of a sort of industry wide issue.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like you were saying, finding like-minded people who are writers helps, even though, say, your partner might necessarily, obviously your partner cares and you really care about this, so they're trying to help you out, but writers understand best. And I think if you can find writers, yeah, that have similar life experiences to you, I think it is important to connect with other like-minded writers. Is the industry making that easy? Not necessarily. Are some parts of the industry trying to improve it? Yes. Is it enough yet? No, never is. Yeah, I think that's really tricky actually, and this is something that I'm always trying really hard to make sure that I run the hub. I'm the hub manager, and I have people come and talk to us about these things. We had it was all over the news, so I can talk about it. Simon James Green's one of our um, mentors and does stuff for us and has done WowCon stuff for us and all sorts. Amazing writer, amazing person. He was in the news because a school had decided to block his visit based on the fact he's gay. And, it got a lot of press and that was amazing. But I did have a couple of hub members come forward and just say, when I said online that I completely condoned what had happened and I supported Simon, they said, oh, I'm really glad you said that and spoke up. And not that they thought I wasn't like that, but sometimes you have to remember to speak up. So I think, yeah, it can be quite a lonely place. I mean, writing circles are so small anyway. It seems like there's loads of us all trying to get published, but actually publishing's tiny. Everyone knows everyone. And I
Yeah.
think if sometimes you feel like you don't fit in you're a square peg in a round hole, can be quite tricky, really
Yeah,
hard. So
absolutely. Yeah, visibility and representation are obviously top priorities.
yeah,
Well, certainly for us, we are always conscious of that, and hopefully for for everyone involved with the
yeah,
industry.
100%.
The last one just to finish up on, which I thought was quite a positive one, and a nice way of looking
Oh,
at it, was from Claire Welsh, who we know obviously is a picture book extraordinaire, and
hmm.
our picture book tutor for our course. She said she had lots of imposter syndrome when she first started writing, which is interesting because we talked about how sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah,
Um, she thought that it would get found out that she had zero talent, which again we've since discovered is not the case. It do- she said it does get better with time and with self belief, and these days it comes when she's running workshops and events rather than the writing. So
Okay.
obviously a new skill, a new area in which she's obviously trying to learn and improve in. As a self-trained writer, I wonder if I should be given the privilege. Do I know what I'm talking about? Ultimately, she asks herself, though, does she have things that she could share that she thinks would be useful to me when she was at the beginning stage? And
Hmm.
for her, the answer is yes. So off she goes,
Yeah.
which I think is a
I
nice
don't.
way to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good sort of rounding off of what people are saying. Because interestingly, this leads into how I feel about imposter syndrome. I feel the opposite to Claire. So I get really bad when I'm writing, but not about doing the business side. So I've been self-employed since I was 16, been self-employed all my life, work now contract through Right Mentor. I run my own stuff. I would say me and Stuart are control enthusiasts. We like to be in control, not freaks, enthusiasts. And I like to be in control of stuff. And number one, writing is an industry you are not in control of quite a lot of the time. That's really hard, especially when you're a goal oriented person. But I feel like I can do it. Like, I feel like I can run the business parts. I feel ready for pitches. I like talking to the industry people. But I don't feel confident in my actual own writing. Weirdly, that's the bit I really struggle with. I always worry. I read stuff back and think I could have done this better. This isn't good enough. Whether it's a first draft or even like when I'd finished this edit recently, I mean, I was pleased it was finished, but it did feel messy when I finished. I was like, this is going to be a mess. And if anybody's been following on my Twitter, my mother's been reading it and giving me feedback. And to be fair, it's not that bad for her, actually. People were saying, oh, your mum's a bit harsh. I was like, no, this is quite good, actually. I'm kind of impressed with how not hardcore the feedback's been. So she's being sort of a beta reader for me. But I still think everything I read published stuff. I read The Undying Tower and I have to read the first chapter. And as I'm reading it, I can see stuff I want to change. Even if I'm reading the first chapter to a class or something, people have bought it. People are like, oh, I really enjoyed this. And I went to a book club in Rabbit Hole, Brig, in Brig, the Rabbit Hole bookshop. And yeah, everyone there had read it and enjoyed it. And I was still reading it, cringing a bit because I just cannot. Imposter syndrome in my own writing is really bad. With the actual
Yeah.
industry stuff, I'm actually okay. I feel like, yeah, this is the thing I'm practiced at. I've done this since I was 16. I've worked for myself. Like, I'm in control of those parts. What I'm not in control of is whether somebody picks up my book and likes it or leaves me a 1-star review on Goodreads. And so
Yeah.
that's the bit I get imposter syndrome about. So it's the
Do,
opposite
do,
to Claire.
yeah. Do you know
Yeah.
what's interesting though, Melissa? But as someone who's obviously, saw your debut been published, and I see how you interact and so on online. You do interact more when the conversation's about other things than you do about your own book and your own work. Like and this is something we spoke about the other week.
Yeah.
You really don't talk about your own book or
No.
retweet, sort of good comments and so on, half as much as you should.
No, I don't. You're so right. I don't. I just get really, maybe it's the British thing. Maybe I need to embrace the American side more or have a pint
Yeah,
of course, the thing that I said. But I just find it really, I post one thing about my book and think, oh, well, everyone's going to be bored of this already. I've just been banging on about myself I'm terrible. I'm really, really bad for it. Yeah. I don't like talking about my writing online. I probably should because my Twitter, I don't put much personal stuff on. So I probably should talk about it more. And maybe that would help with imposter syndrome. If I talk to
yeah,
other people, it definitely helped. I posted when I got this bad writing news, and I had so many comments and so many people reaching out and saying, "Oh, like thanks for telling us," and it just made me feel a lot better actually.
yeah,
Like sharing that, and maybe I should talk about it more, and it would help with the imposter syndrome thing. Because actually, weirdly, having bad news and then sharing it, finding out other people having bad news, did help and make me think, oh, it's not just me. It's not because I'm the worst writer in the whole world. So that's why I had this bad news. It was, yeah, I think helps get me out of myself a little bit. I think I can become a bit self-obsessed and self-absorbed about my writing, if I'm totally honest. Like, I
yeah,
don't think about, I'm either panicking about what somebody else is going to say about it, or I'm panicking that I'm not good enough anyway. No matter what I write, it will always be bad. And maybe I need to get out of my own head, to be honest.
yeah.
How are you
That
about it? What's your sort of stuff on self?
It's a bit chaotic up here, to be honest, in the grey matter, Melissa. It's there's a lot of misalignment of neurons in there when it comes to certainly when
Uh,
it for most things I'm fine, but when it comes to things like thinking about myself and my own self perception and so on, I
mhm.
am terrible. As we're talking about the start of the show, I'll always try and divert any positive attention or
Mm,
comments or feedback that I receive away. I just deflect them, and
yeah.
I only seem to absorb negative stuff, which then, of course, feeds into that negative self perception of of your abilities as a writer and so on.
Mm,
And it's interesting because I am a writer. I am okay with saying that,
hmm.
but if someone in real life who doesn't necessarily follow me on Twitter or whatever asks me about it, I am terrible. I get so shy, and I'm just like, oh, it's just a wee thing I do in my spare time, and I'm writing this wee book, and it's not important. And but and you shy away and you shrink away from from actually how you truly feel about it. You
Yeah.
are passionate about writing. It's something you love doing. It's something you could talk about all day potentially, but
Hmm.
there's something there, and it is that imposter syndrome that says no, you shouldn't be confident about your abilities as a writer. You shouldn't be talking about it and telling the world. And
Yeah.
it's a strange thing, and it's a barrier, I guess, that for a lot of us we have to try and break through, because I don't think it actually serves anyone doing
Nope.
that. It certainly doesn't serve yourself to belittle yourself, and it doesn't serve the people around you to see you not sort of, I guess, shining as brightly as you should, to put it in a cheesy way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the saddest thing, isn't it? And it makes people, especially maybe go back to underrepresented people, and maybe they feel like as well, I don't fit in here and I'm having a massive imposter syndrome because I've just started writing and I know how hard it is. So I'm not going to put my stuff out, even if they want
Yeah,
to. I mean, I know a few writers that don't write to put their stuff out. They write for them. Absolutely, you're still a writer. Again, not just because you're not trying to get published, you're not trying, that doesn't mean you're not a writer. But if you do want to put your stuff out there, yeah, you've got to shake the imposter syndrome demon. It's hard. I get it. Yeah, it is really hard. But everything I write, I don't know if people will be like, "What a surprise!" And then even that makes me feel like an imposter. That I think, well, obviously I'm such a big famous author. People will be so surprised to hear that I have imposter syndrome. And I'm like, "Oh, get a grip, Melissa!" Like, you're not that special. And then I'm like, "Why am I doing it again?" It's really bad.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a really hard thing to shake.
So it's like a wee spectre that sits on your shoulder and just
It
whispers
is.
into your ear and says, "Don't say that. You're not good enough. You
Mm-hmm.
can't say that. You can't be confident. You can't share your passion."
Yeah.
Which is it?
Who do you
Yeah,
think you are? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting, and obviously today has shown us as well from reading through the tweets that it's really applicable across all stages for all writers. And
Yeah.
I hope that the discussion today between obviously myself and Melissa, but obviously the other ones we share too, will give those of you who are listening some hope that it can get better, and but also solace that other people share in the same problems that you do when it comes to
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. Any top tips, Melissa, before we finish for dealing with it? What do you do when it gets really bad? Is there a way to sort of get yourself out of it and to remind yourself, actually, I do belong
Yeah.
and I am good?
Well, definitely the sharing thing, which I do not do enough of. Not even behind the scenes. I'm very bad for sharing stuff. I really just don't like doing it. But it does. It really, really helps to hear from other people and hear that you're not the only one, and it's not. It's also just remembering you tell other people, oh, it's subjectivity. Anything can happen, and then something happens to you that's due to luck or subjectivity, and you're like, no, but this time, this is the one specific time. It's not that. And that's illogical. So I try and get my logical side to say no, that's exactly what's happened with X, Y, and Z, all these people on the hub or people I'm talking to on the hub weekly chats, and I say exactly the same to them, and I mean it when I say it. So I need to
Yeah.
apply that to myself. So I think sharing is my top tip. Definitely, it's not as bad as you think. Don't just share, and if you just share the good stuff, sometimes it makes it harder to share the bad stuff. And you definitely don't have to share everything. It doesn't have to be on Twitter. You don't have to be like Stuart and just post entire rejection threads, post a whole podcast about rejection. You can just share to your friends, or just share to your Facebook group, or just share to your WhatsApp group. That's fine. Just find somewhere where you can have an open forum and people can say, yes, I understand how you feel. That helps.
Interesting. Yeah, I am the king of TMI. I'm just far,
Love to
far,
share.
far. Yeah,
We all love it though,
far
to
too
be
much.
fair. I love reading it. I love hearing other people share. I'm just not a
Yeah.
sharer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tip though, because it certainly helps me.
Mm,
It actually, in some ways, it disassociates the rejection and the
yeah.
disappointment and so on from me
Mm,
personally when I share it. because it's a shared disappointment and a shared rejection.
Yeah.
So, and it's almost like I'm looking on myself from the outside
Yeah.
when I'm doing these things, and that helps
Yeah.
to sort of rationalize and put it into context as well, what it actually is.
Yeah.
It's a story that you've written, and someone has said, I don't think I can sell that. And then, we've talked about this before, but it's not
Yeah.
it's not a personal thing. And
No.
we I guess we do take it to heart, and that feeds into the imposter syndrome when we do get rejections and so on. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably my best advice, is again, to share it, but also just to try and, if you can, disassociate yourself from your writing a little bit,
Yeah.
and sort of look at it sort of more objectively if you can.
Hmm.
You said sometimes when you reread your work, you cringe, but actually sometimes I have the opposite feeling, like where it's not as bad as I remember it.
That's true. And there's been a bit of a gap when you leave a
Yeah,
gap. Yeah, that's very true, actually. Yeah. And it feels like I actually feel like I'm reading a book by somebody else. So
yeah.
just disassociate yourself completely from the writing. Oh, this is somebody else that wrote this. It's fine.
And actually, and if you're getting too much critique or feedback from people who are also writers, who, in my experience, tend to be quite critical and quite harsh, because they know more about the craft and so on.
Right.
Sometimes it's worthwhile getting someone who is not a writer, who just
Mm,
quite likes reading, to read your stuff,
mm.
and the validation that can give you when they say, like, for example, my wife sometimes says, "Oh, that's almost like a real life book," when she reads when she reads my work. And although there's a sort of hidden dig in there, but it's nice though to know that someone who reads a lot and enjoys other really
Yeah.
good quality work can say it's almost as good as
Yeah.
that when they read your work, and it does make you feel a little bit better and a bit closer to where you want to be with it.
Yeah, remembering the end goal. The end goal is most readers aren't actually writers. Just because writers are always readers, I think we assume all readers are writers. They're
Yes,
not. They just want a good story. It's
that's it.
fine.
They don't care.
Calm down.
They don't care about adverbs or
No, they really don't.
they don't.
They'll be fine. You'll be
They,
fine.
yeah, they don't care which point of view you use or
Nope.
anything else. They just want a really good story that's going to keep them engaged and interested.
Exactly. So as long as you're having fun, they'll have fun. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it too much.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, perfect. That's a lovely note to finish on, I think, for this episode. So that was episode 3 of This Writing Life, and today we were talking about imposter syndrome. Thanks very much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.